Welcome students. In the last video we have seen the various sources to reconstruct the history relating to Mauryan Empire. Dhamma was basically the principles, it included the principles that were used by Ashoka, which he considered and he proclaimed about his understanding to Dhamma, and he used various inscriptions to show and depict his understanding. These inscriptions, they include in the Dhamma the respect towards elders, generosity towards the Brahmins and those who have renounced. Renounce means those who have left and those who have left their claim to the worldly life, that is the sadhus and mahatmas. Treatment of slaves and servants in a kind manner, and the respect for religions and traditions for others, also others, those who are practicing different religions and traditions. According to Ashoka, this practice of Dhamma will ensure the well-being of people in the world. Dhamma Mahamata were the special officers who were appointed to spread this message of Dhamma among the people. The various administering centers that were actually taking control of the empire, these were basically the 5 political centers, including the capital Patliputra, the present day Patna, and the provincial centers of Takshila, Ujjaini, Toshali and Suvarnagiri. The administrative control was strongest in areas around the capital and along these provincial centers. These centers were chosen with a view, as both Takshila and Ujjaini were situated on important long distance trade routes, while Suvarnagiri was possibly the important center for tapping the gold mines. As the name itself, Suvarnagiri, Giri means Parvat and Sward refers to the gold. So the golden hill or the golden mountain. The communication as it was along the land and riverine routes was vital for the existence of empire, so that the messages can be spread to long distances. In his book, Megasthenes has mentioned a committee with 6 subordinate or subcommittees which will coordinate the military activities in the whole empire. The emergence of the Mauryan Empire is regarded as a major landmark in the 19th century, because during that time it is considered that India was having a colonial rule, that is the British rule. The archaeological findings associated with the Mauryans, including the sculpture, the stone sculptures, these are considered to be the best examples of spectacular typical art. The nationalist leaders, they have regarded Ashoka as an inspirational figure in the inscriptions, as he was considered to be more powerful and industrious, and also he was more humble than the later rulers. Now, new notions of kingship. By 2nd century BCE, chiefdoms and kingdoms emerged in several parts of Indian subcontinent, and it was basically in the Deccan India, which includes the chiefdoms which are more common as Cholas, Cheras and Pandyas in Tamilakam, that is the Tamil country, ancient Tamil country, that includes the parts of present day Andhra Pradesh, Kerala and Tamil Nadu. These 3 chiefdoms, they were very stable, they proved to be stable, and they prospered accordingly. The chiefs and kings, including the Satavahanas, who were actually ruling the western and central India, and the Shakas, who were the Central Asian tribal origin. They established their kingdoms in the northwestern and western parts of India, and they derived their revenue mainly from long distance trade. The divine kings. It was basically the empires like the Kushanas who were ruling a vast kingdom from Central Asia to northwest India. They were actually following this tradition. According to this, the king was considered to be a divine personality, that is associated with the deities, that is God. And the titles like Devaputra or Son of God installed colossal statues in the shrines, and there are evidences of larger states like the Gupta Empire, and these states they were dependent on the Samantas, the persons who maintained themselves through local resources, which included the control over the land area. The Prashasti, especially the Prayag Prashasti or the Allahabad pillar inscription, which was composed in Sanskrit by Harisena, the court poet of Samudragupta. It is one of the most powerful inscription that states about the power and the effect of the Gupta Empire and the Gupta rulers. In the countryside, anthological studies and anthologies such as the Jatakas and the Panchatantra, they give us a overview or glimpse of the relations between the king and his people, that is his subjects. One famous story is a king, he went to disguise just to know what the people think of him, and when he met the people, when he was in disguise, he found that the people living in rural areas, they were actually cursing him. These people included the men, women, the cultivators, the shopkeepers. They actually cursed him because it was the king who was trying to fill his coffer by demanding high taxes, and the peasants especially they found such demands to be oppressive. So they cursed him, and this special Jataka story tells us that the kings they often used to worry about their relations with their people or their subjects. Certain strategies they included, and they were especially aimed at increasing production to meet the growing demand for taxes, like the shift to plough agriculture, that is especially in the fertile alluvial river valleys like the Gangetic plains, Ganga and the Kaveri. The areas spread along the Ganga and Kaveri. Also, the production of paddy was increased dramatically by introduction of transplantation. In transplantation, the paddy plant is sown in one area and then it is transplanted to the field when it grows. This increased production benefited in the way that a growing differentiation among the people engaged in agriculture, and it was not equally distributed, as the entire area was not fertile. Some specific areas which were fertile, they created more production, and due to this production there was a clear differentiation between the farmers who were farming or who were cultivating those fertile lands and those who were cultivating the less fertile lands. The Buddhist traditional stories they referred to the term Grahapati, which was used in Pali texts to designate the second and third categories. According to these texts, the landowners, the large landowners, they were mentioned as Velalar, the plowmen were mentioned as Ujhavar, and the slaves are mentioned as Adimai. The control over land has become crucial with these rising differences, as it has been discussed in legal texts, and the codes of such differences have been found in the legal text. During the early centuries, grants of lands were made, and many of these grants have been found to be recorded in the inscriptions. Like, according to Sanskrit legal texts, women were not supposed to have independent access to resources, especially land. Now, towns and trade. The major towns which they emerged, and they were located along the communication routes, like the Patliputra, it was on the riverine route. Some of the towns, they were near the coast from where sea routes began, like Mathura, which was one of the important centers of commercial, cultural and political activities. The artifacts which have been recovered from the excavations in these areas include fine pottery bowls and dishes, and these are known as northern black polished ware. These are having a glossy finish on them, and since these are glossy, it was probably used by rich people along with the ornaments, tools, weapons, vessels, figurines, that is statues, made up of a wide range of material including gold, silver, copper, bronze, ivory, glass, shell and of course terracotta. The inscriptions have been found in many cities. Sometimes the guilds or shrenis, that is Shreni, the organization of craft producers, and guilds, the organizations or associations of merchants, they are also mentioned in these inscriptions. Also, the river routes, they were passing through the subcontinent in a crisscross manner, and they extended to various directions. The rulers, they often attempted and fought to control these routes, and for control and protecting, they also charged a price for offering that protection. The people or the traders who were using these routes included the peddlers who probably traveled by foot, and the merchants who were actually traveling in caravans of bullock carts and pack animals. Pepper was in high demand in the Roman Empire, as well as the textiles and medicinal plants. These were all transported and exported across the Arabian Sea to Mediterranean Sea. These exchanges were facilitated. To facilitate such exchange, coinage system was introduced. Punch marked coins of silver and copper were the earliest to be minted and used. As these coins, they were having punch marks with specific ruling dynasties, these are still to be deciphered and identified. The first coins, those bearing the names and images of rulers, were issued by Indo-Greeks, who were having their control over the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent. The first gold coins were issued by the Kushanas, who claimed themselves to be divine rulers. I told in the the widespread use of gold coins, that indicated the enormous value of transactions which was taking place, and these spectacular gold coins were issued by Gupta rulers. The coins, they were also issued by tribal republics like Yodhayas of Punjab and Haryana. The Roman coins, they have been hoarded and they have been found from archaeological sites in South India also. This depicts that the trade from the Roman Empire was there, like I just quoted in the video. and the network of trade was not confined within the political boundaries. It was and South India was not part of the Roman Empire, but the close connection of the South India with the Roman Empire can be established by taking this instant from the hoards of Roman coins that have been found in the South India. Now, how the inscriptions are deciphered? See, most of the inscriptions, they were written in Brahmi and Kharoshti. The Brahmi script, it was used to write modern Indian languages, and these are derived from Brahmi. That was used in most Ashokan inscriptions. The investigators, they have, with the help of several epigraphists like James Prinsep, they were able to decipher Ashokan Brahmi in 1838. Kharoshti was the script which was used in inscriptions in the northwest. The Indo-Greek kings who issued their coins, who were ruling the areas of the northwestern part of the subcontinent, they used the Kharoshti script to mention, and these coins, they contains the names of kings written in Greek and Kharoshti. The European scholars who were able to read the Kharoshti, they compared the letters with Prinsep and they identified the language of the Kharoshti inscription as Prakrit. Epigraphists and historians, after studying these inscriptions and findings, they thought and they came to a conclusion that in terms of content, style, language and paleography, these inscriptions and whatever findings in the form of coins are there, these are constantly assessed and they contain the statements made in the inscriptions to judge whether they are true, plausible and exaggerated. But there are some limitations to these findings. First of all, it is not always easy to be sure about the exact meaning of the words which are used in inscriptions. Several thousand inscriptions have been discovered, but not all have been deciphered, published and translated. Thus, epigraphy alone does not provide a full understanding of political and economic history. And also there are questions which have been raised by historians regarding both old and new evidences. That's all we have in this video. Thank you. Have a nice day.